today's webinar on app frauds and user retention for 2020. I hope you're all doing well and are safe. We know there's a host of webinars to choose from these days, and we really appreciate that you choose to attend this one. So thank you for joining us, and we hope you are able to take away some new ideas and insights from today's webinar. I'm Akshatha Kamath. I head the content marketing team here at MoEngage, and I have with me on the panel Salloom, Senior Customer Success Manager at Scalarr. Welcome, Ray, and I look forward to an interesting chat with you today.
Likewise, Akshatha.
Thank you. Ray, I just read somewhere that an average smartphone user has about 30 apps. He uses about 30 apps in a single month. And I also read on TechCrunch that in the first half of the year itself this year, consumers have spent about $50 billion worldwide on app purchases. Now, these are two very, very interesting and very important numbers because they only reinforce the fact that we all know that mobile is no longer yet another channel, but it is a driver for growth for most businesses worldwide today. So it's naturally very important for everybody to check all the boxes on the acquisition and retention strategies and adopt a holistic approach while they're doing that, so they maximize the outcome that they're getting on their spends and their efforts. So before we get started and jump right into the topics of ad fraud and retention, a quick reminder to all our attendees. This is a live webinar, which means there is a Q&A section at the end of the webinar. We'll try and answer as many questions as we can at the end, but you could feel free to key in your questions through the Q&A tab all through the webinar, and we'll pick the questions at the end. Also, to keep this webinar more engaging, you can chat, key in your comments through the chat window, and we'll keep looking at them as well. And we'll also share a recording of this webinar at the end of it, so you don't need to make notes. You can listen to us and keep watching the slides. So let's get started, Ray. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Akshatha. So Scalarr, we're an innovative machine learning-based anti-fraud solution helping app developers detect all types of mobile app install and conversion ad fraud. We help our mobile advertisers stay well protected while they conduct their paid user acquisition campaigns. Our clients include Joom, Zimad, Huge Games, Play Studios, TextNow, amongst others. Let's move on to the next slide. Thank you. Scalarr combines its experience working with fraud detection, significant expertise in large-scale data analysis and visualization, utilizing artificial intelligence and machine learning in our algorithms, plus advanced software engineering know-how to deliver results. In the end, this helps us do amazing work in detecting fraud in our post-install analysis of client data, using hundreds of data points to help us in determining what is fraud and what is not. We continue to innovate our products and are working towards solutions that will help stop fraud at the impression and click level as well. Last year, Scalarr captured the Silver Stevie Award in the Tech Startup of the Year category at the International Business Awards. So that's a little bit about what we are, who we are, and what we do. Let's move to the next slide, which will introduce our poll question for the audience. So you can see it there in front of you on the slides, and the poll will pop up here. And as you can see, there it is. So the question is, how many different types of ad fraud do you know about or have identified in your own traffic? We'll give you about 30 seconds or so to answer that question for us, as we'll reveal that answer momentarily. And we see some answers coming through, which is great to see. Terrific. We've got just about everyone has come into the chat. So we'll give you just a couple extra seconds there. All right, let us move on and let's reveal the answer. So if you move forward in the slide, we will show you the complete list. And the answer here is actually in the 7 to 9 category. Oops, let's move back. There we go. So in this particular case, we have between 7 and 9 so far that we have identified in our several years here on the market. They include classic click spam, modified click spam, click injections, bots, smart bots. The difference there is the regular bots are doing more simple tasks, such as installing an app versus a smart bot that will do a lot more engaging activity within an app, like maybe even completing a purchase, going multiple levels. Intelligence device farms, incentive farms, mixed fraud, where you might have a good mix. You'll see a mix of regular traffic that looks great, but you'll also have some traffic that's not as great being mixed in and kind of hides itself, along with complex VTA spoofing. So as you can see from the graphs on the right here, even within this list of fraud types, there's a varying range of what we find in any time period of analysis we do of millions upon millions of installs per month. In December of 2019 through February of 2020, the main categories that we were seeing were smart bots at about 36% of our traffic, modified click span of 29%, and bots and device farms comprised 24%. However, what's amazing is if you just look 3 months later at the percentage of fraud that we saw in March through May, which is the middle of May, which is essentially the time we've been in the pandemic, 44.5% have been bots and device farms, 41% have been smart bots, and 7% have been modified click spam amongst the other types. So what does this tell you? That having a complete solution to help you combat all these fraud types is critical for any company to have within their marketing tech stack. So let's move forward to the next slide. So based on the data we've seen, what fraud types have grown to be the most successful for fraudsters? In our analysis of 2019 data, we found that smart bots, intelligent device farms, and click spam have been amongst the top ones. And we've recently seen an emerging and dangerous trend of fraudsters using AI-powered click hijacking. And if you look at the graph here again on the right, bots and smart bots comprise 57% of that traffic in 2019. Click spam was 35% and other fraud types were 8%. But as you saw in the previous slide, that mix continues to change as we talked about. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide where we'll talk to you about the latest type of fraud that we found. And that type of fraud is called complex VTA spoofing. So let's dive into this newest type of ad fraud we discovered. It was about mid-2019 when we did. It is the result of continuous reverse engineering performed by fraudsters who wish to remain undetected, as these completed installs are attributed by MMPs as view-through attribution. Complex VTA spoofing is the method of faking tracking links to spoof clicks as impressions. View-through attribution has become the preferred choice of fraudsters to attack and perform this type of fraud. In essence, fraudsters use complex VTA spoofing to hide spam clicks as views and steal organic traffic by focusing on these ad views, a love target so that they stay under the radar, as fraud patterns in these circumstances are hard to detect. So quickly, let's look at how does this fraud type work. 1, fraudsters will receive a tracking link from the publisher for view-through attribution purposes. 2, fraudsters use this link to target users who are just browsing websites or watching an ad organically and generate a great number of fake clicks in the background and without the user's knowledge. 3, at the same time, fraudsters replace the click link with a view link to conceal the abnormal conversion rate. Thus, with VTA spoofing, you would not observe the high click-through rates that can indirectly indicate more common attribution fraud. And finally, 4, as a result, these fake clicks are spoofed as views and completed installs are attributed by the MMP as view-through attribution driven instead of click-through attribution driven. Fraudsters stay in the shadow and then they get paid. Pretty serious stuff, and something your anti-fraud solution should help you detect so you feel fully protected out there. So let's move on to one more slide. So how should paid user acquisition managers combat attribution fraud on the organic side, especially as marketers face over an estimated $16 billion in losses in 2020? They should use these 3 key tools to help combat attribution fraud. 1, use smart technologies like machine learning. 2, they should work toward a standardization of protocols to help attribute installs for all the correct sources. And 3, having transparency. Transparency is very important for us to be able to really see where the traffic is coming from, and to be able to then analyze all of that information and be able to really see where your ad marketing dollars are going and where they may be going to those that are hiding in the shadows that may be taking some of that ad marketing spend away from you. In the end, if you're out there buying traffic for your mobile app and are not protected by every means available, I highly encourage you to look at Scalarr as a solution that it can help you in the long run. Now, to tell you about retention strategies utilizing the fantastic team and tools available from MoEngage. Here's Akshatha to tell you all about how they do what they do. Take it away, Akshatha.
Thank you, Ray. And thank you so much for talking about the types of fraud and also deep diving on complex VTA spoofing. I hope I'm getting that right because I'm not too familiar with them.
It's okay.
Yeah, so thank you so much. There's something new I learned today. I'll go back and check, probably catch up with you for more about it later.
Absolutely.
So you also discussed organic sources and users being the most valuable customers for a mobile app, especially in current pandemic situation when the budgets are shrinking, and it's very important to avoid ad frauds and ensure that you have complete ROI from the ad spends that you're making. So taking this a step further, I'd like to speak about customer engagement and why it is super critical for apps in 2020. Before that, a little bit of an introduction about MoEngage. For those of you in the audience who are not familiar with MoEngage, we are a customer engagement platform that helps some top brands personalize their customer communication. We operate across 35 plus countries, and this means that, next slide, please. This means we are able to understand how users have been engaging with your apps. Our data scientists, sometime last quarter, took a look at data from about 1.5 billion odd mobile app users. We looked at about 12 different industries in North America, Europe, the Middle East, India, and Southeast Asia regions. All of this data helped us plot what you can see on your screen is the COVID-19 impact quadrant. What we've done is we plotted the downloads, app downloads versus the active users to get a sense of how some of these apps and verticals are performing, and we've mapped them across different regions. And we have seen some very, very interesting trends. There's a lot of trends over there, but just to highlight a few of them. As expected, video chat and online conferencing, media and entertainment have seen exponential growth, but that's something I think all of us know. However, the interesting trend that we saw was delivery apps saw a significant growth in Southeast Asia and North America, but surprisingly a slowdown in India and Europe. Also, real estate apps in the Middle East have seen tremendous growth in between the pandemic times. So these are trends that are counterintuitive. Some of them are obviously expected, but some of them are counterintuitive. So what does this mean, and why am I bringing this up right now? We found that the apps that performed well, they did one of the three things. One, they were into a business who could help users with their needs in the current times. So either they were something like an e-commerce app or a delivery app or a media and entertainment or a OTT app. So they were really useful to the users. Or they were quick to adapt to the changing times and offer services that mattered. For example, we've heard of an app called Jimmy Brings, an alcohol delivery app in the Australian region that started delivering toilet roll, which was an essential, especially in the initial days of the pandemic, along with their alcohol delivery orders. So this helped them retain a lot of users. Third, apps that have grown during this time have been able to build in-app experiences that have brought users back. A classic example is Oyo, which is a global hotel chain. So naturally, with the lockdowns and flight restrictions and travel restrictions, Oyo didn't have too much activity in terms of business revenue going on their apps. However, they retained 98% of their active users on the app. So 98% of the users kept coming back even during the pandemic. So what did they do differently? They launched in-app games, they launched COVID newsletters, they launched videos. So they did a lot of things which people found interesting and informative and kept coming back to the app despite not having any business value there. And while these trends and numbers are very, very interesting, what most brands want to know, and naturally so, is what is the way forward in 2020 and where do we go from here and what does the future look like and what do we do and how do we sustain? So we have some thoughts there too. Next slide, please. So there are three things that could have happened to any mobile app like yours. And again, these are pretty straightforward, right? So either your app has seen an unprecedented growth, which means it could be industries such as media and entertainment, social apps, e-commerce. So you had a huge influx of downloads and a huge influx of users who come to your app. And now you need to sustain this growth in the months to come and keep growing further. The second, apps that have experienced slowdown. Examples could be travel and hospitality, real estate in some regions. You've probably seen lesser number of downloads, lesser app activity, and maybe your revenue has taken a dip as well. The third that could have happened to an app is that it's unchanged, which means that you're pretty much in the same state you were before the COVID-19 hit the world. So you've neither seen exponential growth nor a slump. So examples are finance apps, banking apps, uh, but now's the time for these apps to go strong on their mobile investments and build that share of their business, especially because consumers are open to mobile transactions and are far more comfortable making those transactions online. So now's the time for you guys. Next slide, please. We also spoke to about 50 plus brands across these different regions, because after having the data, we also wanted to understand what these brands have been doing and how do they foresee the future, what do they plan to do to navigate the future. So here's a collection of all the tips, thoughts, strategies, and everything that they recommend. We've consolidated this again into 3 parts. So the first path is the growth sustaining path. Now, this is mostly for apps that have seen tremendous growth. They've had unprecedented volumes of app downloads and users, and the whole point and the whole thing they need to do now is to focus on engaging users and improving their paid and organic acquisition, and understand changing customer behavior and offer relevant content. So these are 3 milestones that we recommend. Next is the bounce back strategy. Now, the bounce back path is for apps that have experienced a slowdown naturally. So you'll probably need some time to bounce back to your older spends and your older acquisition numbers. In the meanwhile, you could double down on your efforts on retention. Some of the milestones for you to rethink are paid spends. You probably want to look at campaigns that are working, channels that are delivering good results, that are getting you customers who are your loyal customers. So you need to look at channels that are working and delivering greater ROI. You probably need to sharpen your organic acquisition and also identify drop-offs in your funnel and plug the leaks. So the whole emphasis for bounce back could be on retention versus acquisition. And for growth acceleration, if your app has experienced neither a slowdown nor swift growth, you could look at choosing some of these steps. You could focus on engagement and retention. So while you're looking at unexplored acquisition channels, you're also making sure that you're retaining the users you're getting. You could do this by building a strong connection with the user community. You could personalize some of your communication and segment them well, so the users are receiving the right message at the right time. So these are just some thoughts and ideas that experts shared with us, and we could sort of slot them into these 3 parts. However, there's a lot more that we have with us, and we recently published a playbook that deep dives into these parts and provides specific steps that you could take to achieve some of these milestones and win during 2020. We'll share a copy of the playbook along with the webinar recordings when we're sending them out to you. You could take a look. And if you don't have time to read through the ebook and you'd like to get a summary, we can help there as well. Next slide, please. So we have a poll question coming up. If you'd like to have a discussion about these engagement strategies, or if you are facing specific challenges in scaling your engagement, your personalization efforts, or actioning omni-channel across your channels, we could help there as well. So we'll give you about 10 seconds to fill that up. Thank you so much. And finally, I think I'll leave you all with a success story that we recently received. 7Mind is a mindfulness app that helps users transform their mind, and it's a powerful tool. Now, they did some very, very interesting things during the pandemic times, and they adopted these things very quickly, and which helped them sort of grow multifold. Here are a few things that they shared with us. They dedicated crisis content to help ease the anxiety of users. So they built specific content that could ease anxiety during these stressful times. They offered premium services for free to users to also build the brand image. They also did things like a meditation course to engage young children and parents who are working from home, plus build the habit of being mindful early on. So these are a few things that they did, but they obviously did a lot of other things as well. But these help them to sort of retain and engage their users and grow the number of users that were coming to their app on a daily basis. I think we've added a slide about how MoEngage can help you achieve some of these things. So MoEngage offers specifically analytics and engagement into a single platform. So if you would like to use our analytics tool, you could use them to understand your user behavior, understand cohorts, and then use open analytics to integrate some of your existing platforms. You could use MoEngage Flows, which is omni-channel user journey orchestration tool. So you can very easily create omni-channel campaigns, send the same message, and create a seamless experience for your users across channels without any kind of a challenge. And it's within a few clicks. The third part, of course, we have a layer of Sherpa, which is our AI engine. We have push amplification, which is a layer that allows your push notifications to get delivered, and also a personalization engine that makes sure that you can embed the most relevant product to users in real time across a host of channels. So these are just some tools that we offer that could help you achieve some of these. And if you'd like to know more about these as well, we could talk about that. You could just drop us an email and we could talk about that. So we'll look at the questions now.
And thank you for the question. It is rather difficult to get refunds from them. I've heard of very, very few occasions where it has actually worked, but it's one of those things that we are actively working on and trying to do our best with our algorithms to figure out if it is there, how do we best then approach a Facebook or Google to be able to help in at least giving them the information and potentially facilitating a refund that may be forthcoming. One of the strategies that we have been working with to try to avoid the fraud altogether, we have just launched actually in the last couple of weeks a brand new essentially a brand new way of being able to stop fraud at the impression level that works with self-attributing networks, works with SDK networks and other sources. We call it Scalarr Blocklist. So what we end up doing is that we take all the analysis that we've done over time and be able to essentially tell you which app IDs that can be found through the Facebook audience network, and soon hopefully on the Google side as well, to be able to give them this block list and say ahead of time, we don't want this kind of traffic because we believe it'll be fraudulent. Please make sure that you do everything you can to not send any traffic this way. So it's rather a more, instead of being reactive and being able to do the analysis later to potentially get a refund, which sometimes can be difficult to get, but instead be able to then utilize your efforts to block it before it even becomes an issue by utilizing something like this. And then utilizing your tools as well that can help you optimize your traffic from there. But I've heard of very, very rare occasions where it's been able to happen, but it's one of those things that, I say anything's possible, and 2020 has quite proven that. So, I would definitely suggest if you're looking to make sure that no fraud comes in from a Facebook or Google, to do everything you can to be able to try to help stop it before it even becomes an issue. We work a lot with gaming companies, and from what we've been able to see from working with these gaming companies is that especially those that are a little bit more experimental, maybe going outside of the traditional SDK networks and using other sources that may be suggested to them, or they've done their own research to get them. It's one of those things where do as much due diligence as you can. Definitely, work with, if it is with a third party tool like ourselves, or working with the MNPs, or working with anyone else in the marketing industry, to be able to really get your hands on some really good data, to be able to see what already is being seen as being very good data, good installs, being able to see what is essentially the good traffic out there. But I would definitely look at your SDK networks, especially the iron sources and bungles of the world. Look at them because, they have a good handle on what they're doing throughout their own network of apps that are being utilized for traffic campaigns, and essentially do as much as you can to be able to look at that information that you can gather from all these sources, whether it be also lists of like the best performing sources that some of the MMPs come from, but also a lot of just discussing with people that are in the industry and try to find those sources that can work for you to try to avoid that kind of traffic going for your gaming app. But definitely doing as much as you can and being able to talk to people is very important to do. Our pricing is very much dependent on the type of traffic and the amount of traffic that you're getting. So there is no set pricing. We would really have to do a deep dive analysis into what you are utilizing today, looking at the data to see how much fraud there is in there. And then we're able to but a lot of it's then dependent on how much traffic you're seeing and looking at your cost per install and cost per acquisition campaign prices. So that helps us formulate a good pricing strategy for you, and then it helps to then make sure that we're doing everything we can, because as your user acquisition campaigns, you want them to be ROI positive. We want to work to try to make it as ROI positive for you. So, because otherwise you can use us as protection, but it doesn't make sense if you continue to potentially lose funds by utilizing our services. So I would definitely say reach out to MoEngage. They will put you in touch with us, and then we can have a better discussion about it, because there is no one set price, at least from our end, to be able to help you. But we're happy to talk and see what we may be able to put together for you.
Sure. I think we also have 3 kinds of plans. We have a starter plan. So if you have anywhere under 10,000 MTUs, monthly tracked users, you could just go to our website, get a free account, and start using the platform. However, if you have more than 10,000 users, we do have the growth and the enterprise plans. These are more customized, again, based on your use cases, based on the features you would like to add, and really based on the number of users you have, and a bunch of other things. So for those, you could talk to us and our expert would help. But if you'd like to take a tour of the platform, and if you'd like to try it, and if you have less than 10,000 active users, go ahead and get an account for free.
There are skeptics out there about the kind of machine learning algorithms that we utilize to be able to find ad fraud. And what we do is we work very, very hard to be able to essentially visualize for our ad networks that we work with and show them the data and show them graphically why we have found the fraud that we have found, and show you why we believe it is fraud based on what our algorithms are saying. Fortunately for us, when we do go through these graphical presentations and go diving into the data, it's something that most ad networks will then look at and go, oh, we didn't see it that way. And then we'll have a nice constructive conversation about, why we think, based on the data points that we receive and our machine learning, that it is ad fraud, that it is fraud that is occurring. I think no matter who you utilize, you're going to have some sort of potential friction points that come about from using any sort of data algorithm or way of being able to analyze fraud out there. And I understand that. I empathize that it's never a good thing to hear that there may be fraud happening. So we do all we can to be able to inform you as best as we can of why we think and believe that this ad install for that particular app has been seen as fraudulent by our algorithms. So it is a constant, it's constant discussion, and one that we continue to try to really put in as much effort as we can to be able to inform and show why we're doing it, and what can be helpful towards working with our clients and the ad networks that they get traffic from, to be able to show the information and the data as best as we can to why this really is fraud that that these app developers are seeing in their paid acquisition campaigns. That's a great question, and it's one that we are beginning to work with on our end as well. I would say that the best way to do it, and especially if you're someone who does user acquisition campaigns and has some of that knowledge of what is working and what is not working on the user acquisition side, you can sometimes apply those same standards to what's happening on the ad monetization side. But I would certainly say to that person who wrote that question, do as much due diligence as you can to find out what are potentially good and bad sources. But I'd also, depending on who you're utilizing for your ad monetization purposes, whether or not you're using a waterfall or you're using a mediation platform that then has either waterfalls or has header bidding to be able to look at the ad monetization and really question what they're seeing to be able to help you stop seeing potential ad fraud in your monetization. Definitely having those discussions with your representatives at those companies that help provide those ads for you can really open up and help you figure out what could occur and how to prevent it the best way you possibly can on your end.
So if a user has deactivated receiving push notifications, I don't think you could send push notifications, because without the user permission, none of the platforms would allow you to deliver. However, if you're talking about the push amplification that I was speaking about some time back, what that does is sometimes there are situations where the user has given you permission to send notifications. However, they're either out of network coverage or they've turned off notifications for a while. So in those kind of cases, it is possible to deliver these notifications can be saved in a cloud space and can be delivered later when the user is online after some time. So that's a possibility. But if they've sort of restricted permissions, you definitely cannot deliver notifications.
I will say that it is a platform I'm just learning about in recent times. So it's one of those where I'm not totally as informed as I possibly could be on that particular one, but based on my knowledge, it is something that could potentially help. And it's something that, especially depending on what your abilities are and what kind of tools you have available to you to be able to measure whether or not the ad sources that you're utilizing are as legitimate as possible, I would definitely encourage someone to utilize what they are offering through the digital ad rating from Nielsen to be able to get maybe another way of looking at the data to help add to your data stacking. For I don't even know if that actually exists as a term, but be able to continue your own research to see what can be helpful to you to avoid those potential pitfalls. And it does sound like a service that could be helpful for you. But I always encourage anyone I talk to, be able to do as much as you can on your end with the helpful knowledge of ourselves, your MMPs, or others in the industry that can help you to make those decisions about where you want to buy your ad traffic from. As someone who has worked at such companies as Bandai Namco and DNA, we utilize sometimes those tier 3 geos to be able to not only generate traffic for our for the apps that we used to work on, but it is possible, depending on your targeting abilities and being able to do everything you possibly can to get your cost per install price as low as possible. And from my understanding, talking to some other people in the industry, they have been able to generate a positive ROI, but I think a lot of it also depends on what is your window for making back that money? And are you doing the best job you possibly can to make sure that the users that you are getting here are the best users you possibly can to help you, achieve those goals? Because even if monetization is very low and your ARPDAU is low as well, if you have someone who stays 90, 120 days, it is possible with a low enough CPI or CPA to be able to make that a positive ROI for your UA spend. At least in my opinion, in my own work and discussions with people in the industry.
Thank you, Ray, for joining us today. It's been amazing chatting with you about ad fraud and how to combat them. So thank you for sharing your tips and your advice, also answering all the questions. I think we've gone over time, but it's been so engaging, and it's glad to see that there are so many questions, which means we hopefully have helped them understand and answer some of the questions they've been having all the while. And for the audience who's joined us today, thank you for joining us, and we enjoyed hosting this webinar for you. Please stay safe and stay indoors as much as possible. Thank you so much.